I overheard Emily talking on the phone and I shouldn't have, but something about her voice stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't the usual friendly tone, this was different. She was laughing, her words laced with something intimate, something familiar. "I'll make sure it's perfect tonight, just like last time," she whispered. My heart dropped. Last time? I froze. I couldn't breathe. Was she seeing someone? I hadn't seen the side of her in years. Everything I knew about our life was suddenly a lie. I stood at the top of the stairs, heart pounding, my mind racing with every possible scenario. Emily was still on the phone, oblivious to the fact that I had overheard everything. "Just like last time," she had said. Those words repeated over and over in my mind. Who was this guy, Chris? What did she mean by last time? Every fiber of my being screamed for answers, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear the truth. Taking a deep breath, I forced my legs to move, slowly descending the stairs. I didn't want to confront her just yet, I needed to know more. I needed to see if I was overreacting or if this was the confirmation of everything I had been too blind to see. But every step I took, the more my heart raced, knowing the confrontation was inevitable. I reached the living room and I could hear Emily's laughter echoing through the phone. My body tensed. That laugh? It wasn't the laugh I was used to hearing. It was too light, too carefree, like she didn't have a care in the world. My blood boiled with every second. I couldn't just stand there like some passive observer anymore. I needed to face her, to demand answers, to finally confront the woman who had promised to love me for the rest of my life. But I hesitated. A part of me wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to assume I was overthinking things. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I was imagining. But deep down, I knew it was. I had already seen the signs, the late nights, the sudden distance, the way she had started pulling away. The late-night business calls that were always so secretive, the frequent absences, the way her phone was always locked whenever I asked to look at it. I had let it slide for months, telling myself I was being paranoid, that work stress was the real culprit, or that I just wasn't paying enough attention. But now? Now I had proof. Proof that my wife was lying to me. And that knowledge was unbearable. I took one final step and turned the corner into the living room. Emily didn't notice me at first. She was sitting with her back to me, still on the phone, oblivious to my presence. But when she heard my footsteps, she turned around quickly. Her eyes widened for a split second before she recovered, that forced smile coming back to her lips. "Hey, babe," she greeted me far too casually, like everything was fine. Like nothing was wrong. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to keep my emotions in check. I couldn't look away. I had so many questions burning in my chest, but I had to keep my cool. I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this. "Who's Chris?" I finally asked, my voice even but hard. Her eyes flickered for a moment and then she laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "Oh, it's nothing," she said quickly, her words rushed. "Just a friend from work. Nothing serious." A friend from work. That was her excuse? I couldn't believe it. My chest tightened, my hands clenched into fists. I wanted to scream, to shout at her, but instead I just stood there, staring her down. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted more than anyone in the world, was lying to me. And I couldn't figure out what to do about it. "Just a friend," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "A friend you whisper sweet things to on the phone? A friend you're planning something with? Don't lie to me, Emily." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, suddenly looking smaller, like she was trapped in her own lies. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt. It was there, but she was trying to hide it, trying to convince herself that I wouldn't notice. But I saw everything now. She opened her mouth, probably to come up with another excuse, but I wasn't having it. I needed the truth, and I needed it now. "Who is he, Emily? And what's really going on?" Her eyes darted away from mine, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of fear. It wasn't the kind of fear you see when someone is scared of a confrontation, but more the kind when someone knows they've been caught red-handed. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blouse. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I simply stood there, arms crossed, waiting for her to finally come clean. She could lie, she could deflect, but I wasn't moving until I got answers. I was done with being in the dark. She cleared her throat, avoiding my gaze. "It's really nothing, I swear. Chris is just a coworker. Nothing more. We're just friends." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Friends? Is that what you're calling him now? A friend you've been texting and whispering sweet things to?" I took a step closer, narrowing my eyes. "I know what I heard, Emily. Don't insult me." "Last time? What's that about? What did you mean by that?" The color drained from her face. For a moment I thought she was going to break down, but she didn't. Instead, she opened her mouth to speak, only to hesitate again, as though trying to find a convincing enough excuse. You don't understand, she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. It's complicated. Chris and I have been friends for a long time and we got closer over time. But nothing happened. I swear. Nothing happened? I echoed, incredulous. Really? Because I don't buy that for a second. What do you think I am, Emily? Stupid? Her face reddened, but she didn't look at me. Instead, she stared at her hands, picking at the edges of her fingernails. The woman I once thought I knew, the woman I had given my heart to, was unraveling right before my eyes. Her defenses were cracking, but she wasn't admitting the truth. Instead, she was trying to minimize everything as if it would somehow make it all okay. Look, I didn't want to hurt you, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never wanted to lie to you. But you did, Emily, I replied, my voice firm. You lied to me. You've been lying to me for who knows how long. She flinched at my words, and for the first time I saw guilt in her eyes. It was brief, but it was there. But instead of coming clean, she still tried to make excuses. It was just a mistake, she said, her voice cracking. A moment of weakness, that's all. I didn't mean for it to happen. I'm sorry, I really am. That's not good enough, I shot back, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. A moment of weakness? You've been sleeping with him behind my back, Emily. How can you possibly try to justify this as a mistake? This wasn't a slip-up, it was a choice. And you made it over and over again. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was stunned. She had no answers left, no more excuses to offer. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice low but filled with finality. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when you've been betraying me behind my back. I trusted you. I loved you. And this? This is how you repay me. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I couldn't bear to hear her try to justify it anymore. I had heard enough. I don't know who you are anymore, I muttered, turning away from her. My feet felt heavy as I walked toward the door. But before I reached it, I stopped. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm done. We're done. And with that, I left her standing there, unsure of what had just happened. My world felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. There was no coming back from this. The door slammed behind me with a finality that echoed in my mind for hours. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to leave. I needed space. I needed to clear my head. The city around me seemed like a blur, the lights and sounds fading into the background as I walked aimlessly down the streets. My hands shook, my heart felt like it was in a vice, and yet I couldn't stop moving. I was numb. It was as if my brain couldn't fully comprehend what had just happened. Emily, my wife, the woman I trusted with everything, had been cheating on me. And worse, she had lied about it for so long. I thought I knew her better than anyone, but in that moment everything felt like a lie. The love I had given her, the years we spent together, all of it seemed meaningless now. The anger was still bubbling under the surface. It was a quiet kind of rage, the kind that builds slowly, threatening to erupt at any moment. But underneath the anger, there was a deep, aching sadness. It was a hollow feeling that seeped into my bones. How could she do this to me? How could the woman I loved betray me like this? Was I not enough? Was I not doing something right? All of these questions circled in my mind, each one gnawing at me more than the last. I found myself sitting on a park bench, staring at nothing. The world continued to spin around me, but I was frozen in place, lost in a whirlwind of emotions. I couldn't escape the images in my head, the way she had looked at me when I confronted her, the guilt in her eyes, the way she tried to justify everything. How could she think that any of it was okay? And then there was Chris. The name burned in my mind like a brand. Who was he? What had he meant to her? How long had this affair been going on? I didn't know how to feel about him. Part of me wanted to track him down, confront him, make him feel the same pain I was going through. But another part of me knew it wasn't his fault. The betrayal wasn't on him, it was on her. She was the one who chose to cheat. She was the one who broke my trust. I pulled out my phone, staring at the screen for a long moment. My fingers hovered over the contact list, tempted to call her, to demand more answers. But what was the point? What could she possibly say that would make any of this better? She had already told me everything she thought I needed to hear, and none of it was enough. The lies were too deep and the wound too fresh. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to fix this. But I knew one thing: I couldn't go back to her. Not after what she had done. She had taken everything from me. My trust. My love. My security. And in return, she had given me nothing but betrayal. The hours passed and I stayed in that same spot, barely aware of the world around me. When I finally stood up, the weight of the day settled heavily on my shoulders. I needed to go home, to face what was left of my life. To look at the wreckage she had created. But even as I walked back to my house, I didn't know what awaited me inside. I didn't know if she would be there, waiting with more lies, or if she had already moved on with Chris. Either way, I knew one thing for sure: my life would never be the same again. I stood outside the house for a long moment, staring at the door. It felt like a lifetime ago that I had walked through that very threshold, the house filled with laughter and love, everything familiar and comforting. Now, all I felt was emptiness. I wasn't sure what I was about to walk into, but I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. Emily was inside, probably waiting for me to come back, to let her explain herself, to beg me to forgive her. But I couldn't do that. Not after everything. I opened the door slowly, stepping inside. The silence hit me immediately. There was no warmth, no laughter. It was cold. The air felt thick, like the tension was settling into every corner of the house, suffocating everything it touched. Emily was sitting on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. She looked up when she heard me, but there was no joy in her gaze, only fear. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice shaky, but it felt more like a formality than genuine concern. "Am I okay?" I repeated, walking slowly into the room, my anger rising again. "How do you think I'm doing, Emily? You've been lying to me, hiding a whole part of your life. How could you think I'd be okay with that?" Her face twisted with guilt, but she didn't speak. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. I couldn't bear them. The flood of emotions I had been holding in for hours now came rushing out. My voice cracked as I continued, my words laced with betrayal and frustration. "How could you do this to me? After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I trusted you, Emily. I gave you my heart, my everything. And you were behind my back with him, with Chris. How could you not think about how much this would hurt me? How could you be so selfish?" She flinched as I spoke, but her eyes didn't meet mine. She looked down at her hands, twisting them in her lap as though the simple act of looking at me would be too much for her. Her silence was deafening. "Say something," I demanded, my voice barely holding together. "Tell me this was a mistake. Tell me you didn't mean it. Because right now, it doesn't feel like anything you say can make this okay." She opened her mouth to speak but paused. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It just happened. I never wanted to destroy what we had. I couldn't believe it. It just happened?" That was her explanation? I wanted to scream, but I could only stand there, feeling the weight of her words crushing me. "It didn't just happen, Emily. You made choices. Over and over. You made a choice to betray me. You made a choice to keep it a secret. And now you're standing there acting like this is just something that slipped through your fingers." Her face flushed with humiliation, but she still couldn't meet my gaze. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "I'm sorry," she said, the words sounding so hollow, like she had rehearsed them 100 times. "I really am. But I don't know what else to say." I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but it was useless. The anger was still burning. I needed space, I needed answers. But most of all, I needed to decide what to do. Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever look at her the same way again? I shook my head slowly, the decision dawning on me like a heavy weight. "I don't think I can do this anymore, Emily," I said quietly, the words cutting through the tension in the room like a knife. "I can't pretend like everything's okay. I can't keep living in a lie." Her face crumpled at my words, but I couldn't soften them. I couldn't go back. Not after everything. The room felt suffocating. The walls, which once held the memories of our love, now seemed like barriers trapping me in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Emily's eyes were wide, pleading as she stared at me, but all I could feel was the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. My mind was a battlefield, anger and sadness clashing in a vicious fight. It was like I was losing myself, losing the version of me that had been built alongside her. Everything I had thought I understood about our relationship was now broken, and the cracks were too deep to ignore. Her voice trembled as she spoke, "Please don't leave me. I know I've messed up, but we can work through this. We can fix it." But I couldn't. I couldn't fix something that had been shattered beyond repair. There were too many lies, too much deceit, too many secrets buried beneath the surface. I had been standing here, trying to piece together the remnants of a relationship I thought was solid, but all I saw now was a house of cards that had crumbled with the slightest breath. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Emily," I said, my voice harsh, cutting through the air between us. "You've lied to me for so long, and now you're asking me to believe that you're sorry. You think I can just forget about everything and move on like nothing happened?" Her lip quivered and she bit it nervously as if she was trying to find the right words to make me understand, but the more she spoke, the more distant she seemed. "I was stupid. I didn't think it would get this far. I never wanted to hurt you. You're the love of my life, I swear." The words fell flat. I had heard them before, the same empty promises, the same excuses. They didn't hold weight anymore. They didn't change what had already been done. How could I believe her? How could I trust her again? The woman I had once known was slipping away, replaced by someone who was capable of things I couldn't even begin to fathom. What am I supposed to do with that, Emily? I asked, stepping away from her. I needed space. I needed distance from the woman who had torn my world apart. You want me to just forgive you and forget? Do you think it's that easy? Her tears began to fall, but it didn't change anything. It didn't make what she did go away. It didn't undo the betrayal. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible now. I love you. I made a mistake. I swear I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen? I repeated, the frustration evident in my voice. You didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And now I have to deal with the fallout. I have to pick up the pieces of my broken heart while you stand there crying about how sorry you are. I turned away from her, unable to look at her anymore. The anger had shifted to something colder, something deeper, disappointment. The woman I had loved was gone, and in her place was a stranger who had betrayed everything we stood for. Maybe I'm the one who made a mistake, I said quietly, almost to myself. Maybe I was wrong to think we could make this work. I walked out of the room, not waiting for her to call after me, not wanting to hear any more of her pleas. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to leave. I needed to clear my head, to get away from everything before I made a decision I might regret. The house felt colder as I stepped outside. The weight of the situation was sinking in, and I realized something in that moment. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. She had broken me, and no matter how much she cried, no matter how many times she begged, that was something that couldn't be fixed. I spent the rest of the night wandering the streets, aimlessly walking with no clear destination in mind. My mind was too full of rage and confusion to focus on anything else. Emily's face, her eyes, those pitiful tears she had shed, they replayed in my mind, a constant loop of pain and disbelief. I couldn't escape it. Every corner I turned, I saw her, heard her voice. I felt like I was suffocating in my own emotions. When I finally made my way back to the house, the first light of morning was creeping over the horizon. The house was dark, cold, and silent. I couldn't bring myself to go inside immediately. Instead, I stood in the yard, staring at the home that had once been filled with love and laughter, wondering where it had all gone wrong. How had I missed the signs? How had I been so blind to the truth? I had given her everything. I had trusted her more than anyone else in my life. And now that trust was shattered. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the lies. The deceit. The way she had hid everything from me for so long, pretending like our life together was perfect while she was out there building a secret life with someone else. I could still feel the sting of her words from our confrontation. I love you, she had said. But those words no longer meant anything to me. How could they? Love didn't feel like this. Love didn't hurt this much. I stepped inside the house, not sure what I was expecting. Emily was sitting on the couch, her face pale, her eyes red. She looked like she had been up all night, probably crying or trying to figure out what to say. I didn't want to hear any more apologies, though. I didn't want to hear the same rehearsed excuses. I had heard them all before, and they didn't change anything. Are you leaving? She asked softly, her voice shaky, almost pleading. I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I walked past her and into the kitchen. The emptiness in this house was suffocating. The kitchen, once a place where we shared meals, where we laughed and made plans, now felt like a cold, sterile room. I couldn't stand being there anymore. I couldn't stand being here, in this place that once felt like home, with the woman who had destroyed everything. I poured myself a drink, my hands still trembling from the weight of everything. What do you want me to say, Emily? I finally asked, turning to face her. You've made your choice. You've already shown me who you are. And now I have to decide if I'm willing to stay here and keep pretending like nothing happened. She didn't speak. She just sat there, her shoulders slumped, staring at the floor. Her silence was the loudest thing in the room. It said everything that needed to be said. She was sorry, but she wasn't sorry enough. Not enough to undo what had been done. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said quietly, finally admitting the truth to myself. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And I don't know if I want to. She flinched at my words, but she didn't say anything. There was nothing more to say. She had already said it all, the apologies, the excuses, the explanations. They were meaningless. They didn't change what had happened. They didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Maybe I need to go, I said, my voice filled with finality. Maybe it's time for me to walk away from this. From you. From everything we built together. She stood up, her eyes wide with shock. You can't leave me. I love you. I need you. But I didn't need her anymore. Not like this. I wish you had thought about that before you cheated on me, I said, my voice cold. I don't need you to keep breaking me. I need something real, something honest. And right now, I can't find that here. I turned and walked toward the door. This time, there was no looking back. No hesitation. I had already made my decision. The person I once loved, the person I thought I knew, was gone. And I couldn't keep holding on to someone who had let me down so completely. As I walked out of the house, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. The pain was still there, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I was choosing myself, choosing to move forward, no matter how hard it might be. The world outside the house felt different. The weight of everything that had happened lingered like a dark cloud, but there was also a strange sense of freedom in the air. I had made the decision to walk away from Emily, from the lies and the betrayal, but that didn't mean it was easy. There was still a part of me that wanted to turn around, to rush back inside and pretend like nothing had happened. I could still hear her voice in my mind, her words pleading, "Please don't leave me. We can fix this." But I couldn't fix it. The trust had been broken beyond repair, and I knew deep down that I couldn't go back to a life that was built on lies. What we had once shared, the love and the bond, had been tainted, poisoned by the betrayal. And as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with what had happened. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself, but there was no escaping the pain. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the realization that everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my life, had been a lie. Friends and family called, trying to check in on me, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to anyone. How could I explain what had happened? How could I tell them that the woman I loved had destroyed everything? The shame I felt was overwhelming, and I didn't want anyone to pity me. So, I shut myself off from the world, spending my days in silence, trying to process the reality of my situation. One afternoon, I received a text from Emily. It was short, but the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I miss you. I'm sorry. Please talk to me." I stared at the message for what felt like hours, torn between anger and sadness. The apology, the remorse, it all felt empty. She had said the same things to me before, and yet here we were. Her words no longer held weight. They no longer had the power to fix anything. I didn't reply to her message. Couldn't. It wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I did. I cared too much, and that was why I had to stay away. If I allowed myself to talk to her again, I might find myself back in the same cycle of lies and hurt. I couldn't afford that anymore. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, I began to rebuild my life. I focused on work, on finding distractions that would take my mind off everything that had happened. I threw myself into projects, into meeting new people, into trying to fill the empty space Emily had left behind. But no matter what I did, there was always a lingering ache, a reminder of the love I had lost, the trust that was gone. There were moments late at night when I would lie in bed and think about what could have been. What if I had seen the signs earlier? What if I had confronted her sooner? But the truth was, there was no going back. I had made the choice to walk away, and as painful as it was the only choice that would allow me to heal. Eventually, I started dating again. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't something I took lightly. I knew that I couldn't rush into another relationship, not until I was ready. But the more I met new people, the more I realized that there was life after Emily. There was a future beyond the pain she had caused. And though I still thought about her, still felt the sting of her betrayal, I knew that I would eventually move on. I knew that, in time, I would find someone who would respect me, who would love me for who I was, someone who would never betray my trust. The process of healing was slow, but with each passing day, I became more confident in my decision. I had walked away from the woman I loved, and it was the hardest thing I had ever done. But it was also the best thing I had ever done. I had chosen myself, and that, in the end, was the only thing that mattered.